Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. It's time to get fired up about the King of Cool. The world never seems to tire of Steve McQueen, from his tough guy looks to his penchant for fast cars and dangerous stunts. McQueen lived a life as fast and hard as any of the characters he played on screen. So what kind of life shapes a man like Steve McQueen? How Steve McQueen, the King of Cool, became an anti-hero superstar. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. There has never been another actor quite like Steve McQueen. Before his death in 1980 at the age of 50 following a battle with pleural mesothelioma, a rare type of lung cancer, Steve McQueen was considered one of the cinema's greatest leading men. The actor's laid-back screen persona helped films like 1963's The Great Escape, 1968's Bullitt, and 1972's The Getaway become indelible parts of 20th century filmmaking. He may have been recognised as the King of Cool in Hollywood, but the star may have wanted to give up his reign before his life was cut short at the age of 50. He was plagued with insecurities caused by his troubled childhood. How did he end up on the streets at 9? Or working in a cat house in the Dominican Republic before he was 20? Whether it was his painful childhood, his unlikely rise, or his chilling end, there was never a dull moment in the life of Steve McQueen. Turns out this legendary actor lived through a lot. He was a perfect fit for the counterculture era, rising up as a true embodiment of the anti-hero archetype. The actor introduced a new image for a Hollywood leading man, unconventional, rebellious, and ruggedly handsome. Steve McQueen's on-screen presence wasn't much of a stretch. McQueen's on-screen rebel persona matched who he was in real life. He never quite escaped the damage of his volatile, unmoored childhood, growing into adulthood steeped in risk and excess, from fast vehicles and illicit substances to numerous storied affairs. The actor was known for outlandish demands on set, including losing a starring role in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to Robert Redford because McQueen wouldn't sign on without having top billing over Paul Newman. He made complaints about lines and costumes, and several times filming had to be delayed because McQueen was inebriated on narcotics or alcohol, or both. Other times he turned down roles in films that stand today as masterpieces, such as Apocalypse Now, Dirty Harry, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. An irresistibly seductive speed freak, the best-paid actor in the world continues to fascinate with his dating life, but above all his innate sense of style and his racy elegancy. Age of Vintage looks back at the inspiring allure of the blue-eyed bad boy. No wonder he was one of the best-paid actors in Hollywood, but it was a long road to Los Angeles from his hometown outside Indianapolis, Indiana. He was the love child of a stunt pilot, and his mother left the young boy on a farm with his grandparents, which was the best part of his childhood. Born in Beech Grove in 1930, McQueen had an unconventional childhood. His father left McQueen and his mother, several biographers have claimed that McQueen's mother was an alcoholic, when he was only a few months old. From her drinking problem to her penchant for violent men, she never made her son a priority. Unable to manage raising a small child, she left her son with McQueen's grandparents. When the Great Depression hit, he moved to his great-uncle Claude's farm in Slate, Missouri, whom McQueen greatly admired. Claude was a very good man, very strong, very fair. I learned a lot from him. Claude considered McQueen as a son and sparked the actor's lifelong interest in racing when he gifted the young boy a red tricycle on his 4th birthday. McQueen remembered his days on the farm in Missouri as some of the happiest of his life, but they couldn't last forever. As a child, the actor moved around a lot and reunited with his mother in Indianapolis after she remarried. His mother dragged him out of his idyllic pastoral childhood and straight into a nightmare. Since he was dyslexic and slightly deaf thanks to a childhood ear infection, he struggled terribly in school. But if school was bad, his life at home was even worse. Julia's new husband had a violent temper, and he frequently beat young Steve McQueen. It got so bad that McQueen actually ran away from home to live on the streets at just 9 years old. In the blink of an eye, he went from having a loving family and a simple life on a farm to living on the streets of Indianapolis, afraid for his life. It's little wonder then that the boy started down a dark path. He even got caught stealing hubcaps from cars twice in his early life and was handed over to his second stepfather, who beat the teenager severely, throwing him down a flight of stairs. McQueen told his new stepfather, "You lay your stinking hands on me again and I swear I'll kill you." McQueen's mother was persuaded by her new husband of McQueen's issues, and the teenager ended up in reform school, the California Junior Boys Republic in Chino, where he began to mature and learn leadership values. Looking back on the time he spent there, McQueen reflected, "Say the boys had a chance once a month to load into a bus and go into town to see a movie, and they lost out because one guy in the bungalow didn't get his work done right. Well, you can pretty well guess they're going to have something to say about that. I paid my dues with the other fellows quite a few times. I got my lumps, no doubt about it. The other guys in the bungalow had ways of paying you back for interfering with their well-being." When McQueen was 12, his mother's marriage to her no-good second husband disintegrated, and she moved to sunny Los Angeles to get a fresh start, bringing her boy with her. Julia rarely stayed single for long. She'd married for the third time, and in case you couldn't tell, she wasn't exactly into fatherly types. 12-year-old Steve and his newest stepfather hated each other from the second they met. Like his mom's last husband, this guy drank and beat both of them. Before long, McQueen was back in the same cycle of rebellion and law-breaking. His mom threw in the towel once more and sent Steve back to Slater. But McQueen's time on the streets had begun hardening him. He lost his virginity at 13 to a teenage call girl with a sweet tooth. "You didn't pay her with money," he later recalled. "You bought her cakes. She was getting fat, but at 15 it gave her big breasts. By 16 he was working as a towel boy in a brothel." He lived more in his late teens than most of us live in our lifetime. He was growing up and he'd gained a dark side. This marked the start of a new chapter in the life of Steve McQueen. He met a pair of merchant marines and they persuaded him to take his life to the sea. Soon enough he found himself aboard a ship bound for the Dominican Republic. From there he drifted about, doing odd jobs such as lumberjacking in Canada or selling pens in Texas. He was eventually arrested for vagrancy in the deep south of the United States and forced to work 30 days on a chain gang. In 1947, at age 17, he received permission from his mother to join the Marine Corps. He went through basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina. Initially he was promoted to private first class in an armoured division, but had trouble with authority and was demoted to private no less than 7 times. At one point he went absent without leave to spend 2 weeks with his girlfriend and was confined to the brig for 41 days. Despite his trouble adjusting to military life, he remembered the Marine Corps fondly, saying, "The Marines made a man out of me. I learned how to get along with others, and I had a platform to jump off of." The GI Bill he earned as a Marine allowed McQueen to study acting in New York at Sanford Meisner's Neighborhood Playhouse, and at HB Studio under famed actress Uta Hagen. His salvation came when an acquaintance suggested joining an acting school. It seemed a good way of meeting pretty girls, so he decided to have a go. To earn money while in school, he began racing motorcycles, and he was good at it. His winnings each week totaled around $100, more than $1,000 in today's money. He soon had a couple of bikes of his own, along with a burgeoning stage career, and was ready to leave New York for Los Angeles. He was first noticed during an appearance on the CBS anthology series Westinghouse Studio 1 in a 2-part crime show called The Defenders. His new manager got him roles in B-movies to build up his repertoire. His first role was alongside a young Paul Newman, but his breakout came on television on the CBS TV Western Wanted, Dead or Alive. Steve McQueen was soon a household name. By age 29, he'd come a long way from the brothels of the Dominican Republic, starring alongside Frank Sinatra in Never So Few. Then came The Magnificent Seven, a role with Yul Brynner, Eli Wallach, Robert Vaughn, Charles Bronson, Horst Buchholz and James Coburn. McQueen's legacy, stretched out over nearly 36 films and countless television appearances, is that of an unapologetically flawed man. His signature style, often associated with Barber jackets, Purcell sunglasses and Tag Heuer watches, and larger-than-life persona captivated and inspired audiences and fans throughout the 60s and 70s and straight through to today. With the looks that any gentleman would kill for, it's unsurprising that McQueen had his fair share of love affairs and film roles with a string of beautiful women. Despite a film career that commanded top dollar in Hollywood and a 14-year marriage to Neil Adams and 2 kids, McQueen was restless. As his career gathered pace, he never stopped flaunting his affairs, with co-stars including Jacqueline Bisset and Lee Remick, not to mention a host of starlets and fans. Perhaps as a test of his wife's devotion, he made indiscreet phone calls within her hearing and left lipstick smudges on his shirts and trousers and love notes in his pockets. He was pretty much fooling around with every actress in Hollywood. He was just trying to cram everything into his life. He also allegedly abused his wives and lovers. Neil Adams outlined persistent emotional and physical abuse. Further allegations suggest the same treatment of McQueen's second wife, Ally McGraw. No one could understand why the sophisticated former model at the peak of her career had chosen to marry McQueen, whose antediluvian attitudes to the female sex were widely known. Even the gossip columnists knew he was cheating on Ally by renting a suite at the Beverly Wilshire in LA for quickies, though no one quite dared put it that way in print. McQueen's essential mistrust of women, which originated from being abandoned by his mother, was now overriding even his genuine affection for his wife, but Nell was no longer prepared to play a forgiving maternal role. Much to his shock and disbelief, she'd finally had enough. They divorced in October 1971. Emotionally adrift, McQueen withdrew alone to a small house where he enjoyed getting up late, popping open a couple of beers and spending all day watching TV, but he missed the stability of his marriage. Sometimes too lazy to go out looking for women, he'd arranged to interview potential starlets in his suite for a movie that didn't exist, and such was the power of his macho movie image that girls half his age ignored his growing paunch, falling willingly into the convenient bed. He was never all that fussy where intimacy was concerned. If models and starlets weren't readily available, he was perfectly happy to sleep with call girls, the more the merrier. Indeed, a few years earlier, while making The Magnificent Seven, he and his co-star Robert Vaughn had spent the whole of Good Friday in a Mexican brothel. After getting drunk on margaritas, they echoed the film's title by sharing 7 girls between them in one silken-pillowed room. Being a bad boy, of course, was a crucial component of his popular appeal. In person, McQueen was a short, boorish man of few words, sometimes choosing to communicate only in grunts. When he wasn't racing cars or consorting with women, he often spent days doing nothing except watch TV soap operas in a drug-induced haze. Professionally, he was usually a nightmare to work with, throwing tantrums about everything from the cut of a pair of jeans to the billing of another actor. On nearly every film that he made, he fell out with the director or the screenwriters or his co-stars, and sometimes all of them at once. Desperately insecure, he'd work himself into a fury over the success of his rivals. When he learned that James Garner, who then lived in a flat below his, had beaten him in his ambition to make a movie about motor racing, he urinated every night onto Garner's balcony. He used to get the biggest kick out of that, one of McQueen's friends recalled. For decades he had everything he'd ever wanted, a never-ending supply of women, mass adulation, and a license to misbehave. So why did he become such an irredeemably tawdry character? In interviews he was nonchalant about his rough upbringing, as befitted his cool image, but the reality was a nightmare. He was an intensely complicated character, a serial philanderer, yet a devoted family man, notoriously tight-fisted, yet capable of great generosity to complete strangers, and behind the rugged features and nonchalant swagger was a deeply insecure man, scarred by the maternal neglect he experienced as a child, and fearful that one day his career would come crashing down. The only thing Steve was ever secure about was his appeal to women. The legend of Steve McQueen, star of just a few great movies and a great many terrible ones, has proved remarkably enduring. No actor since, not even Daniel Craig as James Bond, has done more than echo his cat-like grace and genuine aura of danger. It helped, too, that his death from lung cancer at 50 ensured that his good looks were never totally eroded by age. In 1979, McQueen had been diagnosed with mesothelioma, a type of cancer often related to asbestosis exposure. It was later believed that the ruggedly handsome actor, who had an affinity for fast cars and motorcycles, might have been exposed to asbestos by wearing racing suits. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Steve McQueen? He wasn't some pretty boy actor who never got his hands dirty.